Hey guys, this is Simon with Trade and Perform Coaching, doing today's trade review for, I'm primarily on CL. I'm going to touch on NQ and ES a bit today, but there's not much to say there because those markets are straight up. So, speaking as a coach, there's one thing that I run into pretty consistently is people confuse performance in the S&P, or they draw this false correlation between the S&P 500 and what ES and NQ are doing, and that is not a correct way to draw a correlation. Oil can be very strong and the indices can be very weak, and vice versa, right? So what you want, the whole goal of this is to, the coaching and running the room, is to help traders get a real edge with what they're trying to accomplish, right? Trading futures is not easy. You can lose a lot of money very easily. So you have to have not just a general edge, you have to have a really solid edge to pull money out of. So let's start with the basics. So number one, these zones, specifically the yellow zones, here I'm going to put a big X on them. The yellow zones are key target areas, and they often will serve as good location to put on a trade. The light blue zones are generally weak zones, or areas where they're what's called the prior day's point of control. They come off a volume profile and TPO profiles, and they can be very choppy locations to trade in, very frustrating locations to trade in. So I generally use the blue zones as targets. I will use the yellow zones as both as targets and initiation points, and the yellow dotted lines and the green dotted lines are generally top of open windows and gap fills, or Dalton's gap fill at least. So today what you can see was pretty basic. If you look at the whole 24 hours, we gapped down, we came up and filled the gap inside prior day's point of control, and we really just couldn't get past the prior day's point of control, and we came back and simply retested. On a 24-hour basis, this was a balanced day in CL. For the US session only, which would start at 8 a.m., this was a minor trend day down. We started off in balance, and we finally just got exhausted and made it down to 49.40. If we make it past 49.40, meaning it doesn't offer support later this evening into Asia, the logical places to look for a response would be 48.90, and then that 48.15 down to 47.95-ish, more or less. Okay, so those are areas to trade in. Or areas to look for setups, right? So there's two ways to look for setups. We go from here, right, to looking at what the algorithm is offering us. Now, there's a trick to that, right? And the trick to that is that if you place your trades in locations where there's support from the day time frame, the chart I just had up, and then you get the patterns there, they have a stronger odds of working. However, you don't have to do that. You simply have to be a good judge of which way the market's going to go, and then wait for the setup. So I'm going to give you an example of that, right? We started off here at 8 a.m. today. And so there's two ways that I like to break down my homework, and obviously I do this for the benefit of the members in the room. And this is primarily the time frame that I'm concerned about, what went on in this little time frame. And what you can see here, I'm going to erase all these lines. So what you can see here is two things. First of all, this is an RSI. All I'm using it for is a general guide that works better on balance than when we're trending, right? But I'm looking to see if I can't get the algo to trigger shorts or longs when we're overbought and when we are oversold. And if you'll follow me in this series, the algorithms were developed from years of as I've been trading for almost 23 years now, and what I wanted to do was be able to encapsulate what the key turns look like. Now, obviously, I'm not going to disclose what's in the algo. However, I am looking for certain patterns, and I'm trying to simplify those patterns so it's easier for people to read. But what they are basically expressing is a lot of energy is being used for a move. So I'm going to give you an example of that. So see, when I get this pink flag and I get there's two triangles there. Here, I'll make it really wide so everyone can see it. All right, I get this pink flag and I get these two triangles. Okay, that is the expression of a lot of energy. And what I would expect, so I'm going to say this really clearly, what I would expect is when that energy is expanded like that, is that we do get a move like this coming out of an oversold condition, right? And the market did exactly what we wanted it to do. Now, I want one other piece. I want one of these arrows to be pointing down or up. I want one of these arrows to be pointing down or up when I get the shift up, and I want it to occur while the RSI is oversold. I'm not going to mention the zigzag cumulative volume because it just makes things really complex, and it doesn't have to be for this explanation, right? So for today, when you look, and we start off the day, number one, when we look overnight, we were primarily in European session. We were in balance, and we were in relatively tight balances, basically bouncing a good portion of when I show up between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. We were just doing this consolidation thing here between 50 and 50.26. It's hard to trade when the range is that tight. And what you'll see is, see all these little double triangles that we're getting all over the place? What's happening is various parties are fighting, and they're trying to get their point across as to which way they want to trade. And by the way, as a side note, I traded horribly today. I did not have a terrible day, but I did not take advantage. So number one thing is when I see all these flags and algo signals being formed on both sides of the trade, I generally don't want to trade in that area. I want the setups to be really clean. But once a side is selected, so this is my first, I dropped the ball. This was the last strong attempt up, was right here on this bar, right here. So if I highlight, so I know before we broke down that the last group of traders that really tried to put a big effort in pushing to the upside occurred on this bar specifically, and in this general area, meaning from this top of this area here to this point here. If I highlight that area, excuse me, a little bit lower. If I highlight that area, what I should have done, and I did not do, is when we came back up into this area, because what am I looking to do, guys? Guys in the room will know this. Gals in the room will know this. If I didn't take advantage of a setup that was clear today, right, I want to understand why I didn't get to take advantage of it and how I can improve it the next day. So what I should have done is when we came back into these areas, right, and what you'll see is I get a shift down arrow, excuse me, down arrow out of each of these areas. And that sets me up so that with about a 14 or 15 tick stop, I got beautiful extensions to the downside. I did not do that. Okay, so area number one, when I see, so what I want to make sure that I'm aware of for tomorrow and the rest of the week and moving forward, I'll take a picture of this and I'll write an explanation. When we see an area of consolidation where the parties are really forcing, these algos are really showing there's a lot of energy being expanded and they're trying to push up and down and making no progress, the side that breaks, when we revisit the last push that went in the opposite direction, so what that means is I know there was a lot of energy forced into this bar to try to get a breakout to the upside. You'll see when we got underneath that bar, they backside tested, failed again. I know when we revisit this area on my first down arrow, I want to take advantage and short that area so I can get paid. So what I'm trying to do here, and what I coach and what I do for myself is I want to look at a day, and I can either look at it and go, well, I didn't make any money, or I didn't make as much money as I wanted to, or I can look at it as, well, how can I improve for tomorrow? What mistakes did I make today that I can learn from, right? So whether you lost money, didn't make money, or you missed your trade, right? The information has value. So go back and grab a pen and paper, print your screen. And so for the first thing we learned from today, when we have all these algos firing in strong algo signals in both directions, whichever way we break, when we retest or backside test that area, on the first arrow down, we really want to take those for pushes to the downside, right? It's a cheap stop, and if you look at the RR, this is 14 cents in risk and about 50 cents a gain in each of these pushes, right? So that's almost a 3-to-1 risk-reward ratio. Okay, next. The next thing I want to know is that could have I gotten set up long in any of these locations? And the answer is, quite frankly, no, I did not get set up long. Why? Because what I really want when I want a short, what I really want is I want some expression of a downside move, and usually I want that expression to come out in the form of a yellow down arrow, right? What that tells me is when I'm trading, so remember we've gone from the macro, 5-minute charts, big time frames, and what we're really trying to do here is really narrow down what our entries and exits look like, right? So it's just like predicting weather, right? I can't really predict what the weather will be like 3 days from today very accurately, right? But I can probably very accurately predict what the weather will be like in 5 minutes from now. If it's cold and rainy outside right now, I bet within 5 minutes it will still be cold and rainy. Give me just 1 second, guys. So what I'm trying to get across is the whole point of this is we have specific setups that work out. Like, for example, what I am looking for, and I missed the trade, right? So I have to do two things. I have to be able to keep my concentration at a high level. I want to be able to keep my frustration down. I had to take a pause if it sounds like it transitioned oddly. My twins were acting up, and I had to go help my wife settle that down. So what I am looking for specifically is a specific pattern that sets up, that I know repeats at a high percentage rate. In my case, I'm looking for a very high percentage rate for that to repeat, right? So that only set up in one place, right? Now, had I gotten one of these little yellow arrows anywhere from here to here, this would have been a great long. Didn't set up. So the next trade that did set up was this right here. So look, see, I have double triangles and an arrow up. What that tells me, as I go through with members in the room, is that there's a ton of energy in this particular bar. Okay, and then they came back again, almost in the same place, and did another very high energy bar right here. So this is the cool thing. The algo, and what I'm normally doing is reading the price action. We're seeing the bids flip. At that point, we're seeing the ask get swept, right? We're seeing the ask get swept, and we know that there's a lot of energy here. So that is important, because what you'll see is if we draw a little line right underneath here and right underneath here, see how this bar with a down arrow on it. So see this bar with a down arrow? That's cool, but it doesn't get behind any of these bars over here. So what I want is to get behind these two bars. That happens right here. So for whatever reason, I simply missed the entry. I may have been looking at NQ at the time. I don't know what I was doing at the moment that I didn't see the entry. And had I had this algo all the way worked out, it would just enter automatically. I would have been entered there. That's a 50-cent trade. More than a 50-cent trade, actually. I believe at the best it was almost 60 cents. We got down to 49.43, and it never saw any heat. So remember, what we're trying to do is replenish the process over and over and over again. Now, a very good question came up in the room today, which is, all right, well, Simon, what about this over here? We went down, right? We went down. We then got a bar with a ton of energy that closed above that bar that had the down arrow on it, right? And isn't that effectively a long for you? And the answer to that question is it is. So it was a judgment call. So there's two things that were going on with that. I have the largest amount of losses historically between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. That's where I get the most amount of stops. Whether it's because I'm tired, I take trades off process. It doesn't matter what the reason is. It just, the statistics show very clearly that I have the largest amount of losses between 11 and 12 o'clock. So I don't want to trade there, right? And then basically the rest of the day, the long just never set up. It was just, CL was really heavy. So there's one last piece that you've got to discuss when you're going through a trade process, right? Because there's two components for most traders to a trade process. The first component is, well, the system is relatively mechanical, right? There's only certain ways that those bars can show up. And when they show up, I want to be able to take them, right? But, and here's the key but to that, you're human too, right? So it's very interesting. I had to completely surrender I had to completely surrender in the afternoon because I was so frustrated from missing the entry earlier. And what I would do back when I was a bad trader, it's 15, 20 years ago, right, is I would get frustrated and I would sit there and try to find all kinds of different ways where I could capture the trade again and try to take trades that weren't exactly perfect or that the algo simply did not set up. And what that usually leads to is losses, right? You try to fish the bottom, you try to fish the top, you're just trying to pull P&L out. I coach both the people I coach and how I run my own trade book, right? Is to go, hey, look, I didn't trade very well today in terms of a perfect execution, right? But what I did do extremely well is I didn't come back in and try to make up trades in here that did not exist, right? I want to say that again. I did not try to produce trades that did not exist, right? And so I did not draw down in CL because I stayed on process. Even though I missed my entry, right, which is the danger of trading 2 and 3 markets at one time, I missed my entry. I didn't come and take substandard entries. And a lot of when I'm working with individual traders one-on-one, a lot of what I find is when they're drawing down or their P&L sucks, it's not because they did or didn't take their best trade. What it is they've taken a bunch of mediocre trades and consistently drawn down. And what I coach to is I'm like, look, go back specifically. If I could only do one trade, even without the backside test of that area earlier in the day, right? Go back and look at this specific setup, guys. You know, Randy, I'm speaking to you. Bill, I'm speaking to you. Brian, JD, all you guys and gals, Joyce. This trade right here, right, where we get a high energy bar, then we get a down arrow and we close behind those 2 high energy bars, right? That is PA in motion. This trade sets up over and over and over again very, very profitably. If you miss it, don't throw your whole book out the window. Go back and go, oh, I got to get better and do it for tomorrow even better. You want me to give you an example here? I'll show you the exact same trade set up on Friday afternoon. Here we are on Friday. All right. We're in overbought condition. Double triangle with the arrow up. Draw a line underneath it. There's your shift down. There's another 50 cents right there. And if you'll look over here, the trade worked opposite, right? So remember when I was talking about the consolidation, this consolidation is set up differently. We got the highest energy push. Instead of getting a bunch of high energy pushes back and forth, we had one high energy push right here. So guess what? As soon as we close behind that, a line over this bar specifically, so we close above, there's another 50 cents to the upside. So what I would encourage everyone to do, number one, if you're watching this video and you don't understand how price action works and you don't understand how trading with an edge works, you're behind the curve. That's not a bad thing to know. It's a good thing to know because strategically you're working against people who are better armed. I am better armed, right? I am better armed to trade against people, to trade against other traders because of what the algo is telling me. The algo is reading the order flow for me effectively, and I know where to come in and pit my trade size. Now, since it's not a fully automated system, meaning I have to manually place the trade, I'm going to have to come back in, right, and make sure that I'm fixed on taking my best setups. And here's another part. It's not a foolproof system because nothing is, right? There's stops. I have to be able to manage my emotions so that there are stops, or if I miss the trade, I don't go off in the right field and try to take substandard or mediocre entries and start losing money, right? A day where you're flat or even slightly down, right, is better than digging a big hole for yourself and then having to have a great day or multiple great days to cover your bad day. So, at any rate, long story short, my name is Simon. I'm a Trade and Perform Coaching. I want to help people trade well to the best of my ability. I want to share with them the success I've had over the years. I've been in this business for 25 years. I don't do it for free. Some people seem to want to give flack about that. The room costs $195 a month. That includes the software on your desktop. It runs on Sierra Chart, right? I do one-on-one coaching. If that's something you're interested in, just contact me directly. If you have questions or you'd like a pass to the room, email me, tradeandperform@gmail.com. TRADENPERFORM@gmail.com. There's two things that are required to succeed as a day trader. You have to be able to stack your profits day over day and week over week. Your drawdowns have to be relatively small, and you have to have some really good days socked in there so you can advance, right? Those are the requirements that are necessary to do well in this business, okay? So that's my 2 cents. I've ran out of time. I'm not going to be able to cover ESNQ, but long story short, straight up. So yeah, what else is there to say about that besides that? So, okay guys, have a great night. I'll post this, and we will see everyone bright and early tomorrow morning.